Hello, everyone, and oh, what the hell?
Got to do something a little bit more ostentatious for my 36th birthday today.
Happy birthday, man! Happy birthday!
Thank you very much.
Very cool.
I can't actually see in this. Yeah.
Oh God. Oh, how have you been anyway?
Good. Quarantine blues and all that, but you find your way through, don't you? And it's quite nice today. I've had like a big cooked breakfast, and I got some cool gifts. A cake just got delivered to the house, which is pretty nice.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that's good. And it's good. Like being in Australia, like the time difference means that kind of your birthday, because obviously all my family are in Spain, so obviously my family's in Spain.
Obviously,
so, obviously,
it sounds Spanish, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. It drags out because obviously they'll like wake up at 10 o'clock tonight, and it'll be my birthday then. So it just keeps going on for quite a while, which is nice.
Yeah.
Being
very cool. Oh well, I'm gonna see you tonight as well. It's quarantine is starting to be eased, so we're actually allowed to be around each other, which is unfortunate for you because man, I have not been showering or maintaining myself very much, and I don't intend to.
Okay, cool.
So sorry in advance.
Well, you've got a brand. You got to stick to that brand.
Yeah, it's mainly stink. So we've got a guest today, and before we bring him in, do you want to give us a bit of a run through of how people can subscribe and support us?
Oh yes. So a little bit of housekeeping. So obviously the usual thing is that this is not a video designed for children. It is for adults only. And you can find this current stream on Facebook and YouTube. So if you just go to Blue Bantha Milk Co, you will find us one way or another. You can also tweet at us, Matt. Oh, got it right that time. Yes,
you did it.
Matt runs the Twitter at Blue Bantha Milk. Get on it. He posts cool stuff, and he has a good presence. So check that out, and then come to our Patreon and drop us a few pesos. And help us keep the lights on, and help us keep making cool content. We've got lots of cool ideas, and and check out our merch. We've got tons of merch, cool merch stuff. We also have on our TeePublic page other people's merch, such as I did it wrong. The Mon Mothma Metallica mashup from Josh Chapman at Star Wars Spelt Out, which is an incredible. As I was saying before we recorded, Josh Chapman has the unique thing of like seeing where the merch is. You can see two ideas that look completely disparate, and you can put them together, and you're just like, obviously, why didn't I think of that? So Mon Mothma Metallica's genius. And that is it for housekeeping. Tell us more, Matt.
Okay, so today we are going to talk about something which normally we don't get to do on our stream. So like our channel mandate is that, we like to talk about Star Wars and its influence on pop culture and all of that. And when we do live streams, it's usually a bit more sort of open and roundtable about news and things that are happening and whatnot. But some news happened during the week that kind of has the reverse potential impact. And we're going to talk about that with a guest of ours. His name is Pete Fletzer from Around the Galaxy podcast. Hey,
hello.
Pete.
Hello. How are things? How are you guys doing? Happy birthday, Sean. I'm honored to be on the birthday special extravaganza. I'm waiting for the dancers and the singers and the
end a minute now.
Okay, good.
I'll get my kid off. Sean will get his kid off.
It's very exciting. Well, it's exciting to be here from the other side of the planet. This is really cool. So
thank you for doing it too.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for coming on.
This is my pleasure.
Yeah. So how this all came about was obviously there was news that came out about the Justice League Snyder cut.
Right.
Finally getting an official release. And we actually saw you make a comment about it, and we were going to talk about it, and we were like, hey, let's talk about this, because obviously, like, people have been campaigning for the Snyder cut for years,
right?
And it didn't exist, but now all of a sudden it does exist. So it raises some questions about, I guess, fan influence and what that can mean for filmmaking and fandom in general. And obviously, since people were campaigning for it, Star Wars fans started tweeting about releasing the Edwards cut of Rogue One. So before we start talking about it, I think there's a bit of extra context that needs to be brought into this conversation. And really, it's just that we all got a teaser trailer and stuff was missing when we actually went and watched the film, and it was overtly missing. Like, I think everyone watched it and went, oh wait, what, where's all that stuff I saw? So let's watch the teaser first. So everyone, we're just going to have a quick little break. We'll watch the teaser and then we'll come back and let's talk about what was missing and all of the things that we just mentioned now.
State your name for the record.
Jin Urso.
Forgery of imperial documents, possession of stolen property, aggravated assault, resisting arrest.
On your own from the age of 15, reckless, aggressive, and undisciplined.
This is a rebellion, isn't it? I rebel.
We have a mission for you. A major weapons test is imminent. We need to know what it is and how to destroy it.
Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
What will you do when they catch you? What will you do if they break you? If you continue to fight? What will you become?
I love that teaser. I love that teaser so much.
I loved Rogue One, but I would love that movie. That looks pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah.
That's the thing with the Edwards cut, though. I'm like, I am the same. I love Rogue One. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
But I also want to see the other version. Like, I'm happy either way. Like, I'm not sort of like, there's a missed opportunity. I'm like, no, I'll take both.
It's funny watching that trailer because it reminds me that when that trailer was running, my kids, I don't remember, it was a couple years ago. So I remember both my kids walking around the house going, what will you become? And, and then kids grab a line from something and they just go with it and they wouldn't let that one go. And then we went to see the movie and it wasn't in there. And my daughter actually came out and she was like, he never said that when will you become thing. And then I also wanted to say, and he also had hair. So but that's it's funny when you watch that trailer, and I haven't watched it since in a while, and I should have prepared for our conversation but didn't. But I watched.
We didn't either. Don't worry.
Good. Because preparing is really overrated.
Yeah.
But in watching that, holy cow! That's a 2.5 minute trailer, and like 2 minutes and 15 seconds are not in the movie. I mean, maybe that's a little over exaggerated, but it's wild. It's really wild.
I would say none of that is in the movie, except for the title.
Right. Yeah.
Well, there's a siren as well. Like, the
right.
That's in it, obviously. But I think, sometimes you watch a movie and you've seen the trailers and you've watched the trailers a few times and you kind of don't get a similar feeling like something's missing, but you kind of recognize it's like, oh, they probably just use alternate takes. Right. Like they said the same thing. They were basically doing the same sort of stuff, but they used like the B footage or whatever of that particular scene for the teaser. And then sometimes that's obvious, but this was probably the first time I remember going into a movie and really noticing it and just like, where's the TIE fighter?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
We're expecting it going, the TIE fighter's going to come because I saw that in the what?
Right. Well, especially right because you get to that end of the movie, spoiler alert, and she's up on the gantry, and you're like, "Here comes the TIE fighter," and it never comes. But even the scenes of Vader in the Death Star weren't in there, which was in a different trailer. And so, I think the difference, though, and I don't want to jump ahead in where you want to take the conversation, but I think the difference here is Gareth Edwards and others have said very clearly two things about the differences. One was some of the shots were shot specifically for the trailer, right? And I don't know if that's how we'll cover it up, or if that's really what happened. And secondly, is the difference here is there's not, Gareth Edwards isn't saying they didn't release the movie that I wanted to make, and I think that's why there's a little bit of subtlety and not as much of an outcry. I mean, I would love to see those scenes, and I think we're far enough away from the movie to be able to see those scenes and not feel like, oh, well, that would have been better if we had that or not. It's an alternate take to it. But yeah, I mean, whereas the Snyder fans, the militant Snyder fans are just like, we didn't get the movie we wanted. I mean, so much so that before I came on, I just saw I think it was in a Screen Rant, where they're talking about Snyder fans are burning their copies of the Justice League. To which I say, why did you buy it in the first place if you didn't like it that much?
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I would have burnt my copy of it if I had bought it.
Right.
I would have burnt it, like take it from the shop and burnt it as like as to try and like wash away a curse, you know, like when you put sage around your house, but like a burning Justice League DVD.
Right.
Like,
exactly. Yeah. So, but yeah, so I mean, it is the differences are fairly dramatic, and again, like I said, I haven't seen it in a while, so it's interesting to look at it again.
Well, I think that the Snyder one as well, they feel robbed, don't they? Of like, he would. I think the difference is like with Rogue One. Rogue One turned out. Like, I mean, obviously, it has mixed fans and all that, but I think it turned out as it was a success.
Yep.
And there wasn't a sense of like, oh, this is half one film, half another film.
Right.
But if you've watched Justice League, it's very much you're just like, that's Snyder, that's Whedon, that you can just pick it out scene by scene.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think the fans were especially just sort of, I think, they felt robbed of like, no, just let him, because obviously Snyder didn't leave under a cloud. He left because of a tragedy. Right. And the studio just plowed on and just kept going. Right. So I think there is that sense of like, no, a crime has been committed against us and we needed to see it rectified. Yeah. But the problem is that, and I'm jumping quite far ahead, I guess, in my ideas here, but like fans, I don't think take the message that they should take from that to be, oh, we've been, we've triumphed and we've done this thing. It's more a case of you feel as though it's like, right, this worked. What else will work? Well, yeah. What else can we get?
And I think the tweet you were referring to, Matt, was when I said release the Snyder Cut is a bad idea. And I really think it is, because I feel like it's a very slippery slope. And maybe it's so tough to say, right? Because if there was a specific vision that wasn't able to be finished, which is the case, right? I mean, he left because of the tragedy with his daughter and, all very, very valid reasons. And then the studio was in mid sort of tone shift for the DC universe. Yeah. And so Snyder shot a movie apparently that was much darker, obviously. I mean, that's his style. And then they came in with trying to lighten things up, and you can't, I mean, it's a miracle that Solo came out as well as it did, right? Because Solo was almost the other side of things, right? It was becoming allegedly too goofy, too silly, too lighthearted. And so, and that one turned out good. I mean, that, of between that and Rogue One, I think that's the one that's the biggest issue. But I guess where I'm going with it is it's such a slippery slope to respond to the fans' demand, and so like the Make Solo 2 Happen campaign, for example, that the Resistance broadcast runs, I think that's really cool. I think it comes from a really good spot, but it's not demanding. It's not like we demand a second Solo. If it comes, great. We just want you to know, as fans, we're here for it. Versus make these changes, we demand you do it, and it starts to become a spot where people address films as business, which clearly they are, but at the same time, they're art, so they're up for interpretation of the people who deliver it, for better or worse.
Yeah. There's I think a very strong argument to be had about the case against studio meddling, regardless of what it is. And and it's sort of an interesting paradigm shift to take an argument that is effectively anti-studio meddling and saying, okay, like you said, Snyder never got to deliver on his vision. Star Wars fans say, oh, you know, maybe Edwards never got to deliver on his vision. You know, they sort of correlate the two, whether that's right or wrong. You know, and the studio should respect it. They shouldn't have brought in someone with such a wildly different take. They should have got the second unit director who was involved in the whole thing and just had them see it through, had them finish it. They should have, you know, there's lots of could have, should have, would haves, all these sorts of things that get thrown around.
Right.
And I guess it's something that was so wildly and hotly anticipated. I mean, like pre-sales for Justice League were huge.
Right.
Huge. Like all the predictions were saying it was going to be a massive film. And I think it hit its first major like financial milestone very quickly. But then of course the reviews came out and people saw the film and that it just tanked at that point onwards.
Yeah.
So like it's quite a different sort of set of scenarios. And I guess the reason for the whole conversation is like people instantly just said, oh well, people want this Snyder cut. Well, I want a cut as well. I want I want an Edwards cut. Like, so where do you think the difference is between, say, someone like Warner Brothers and what they've done and actually bringing it out versus, say, how Disney and Lucasfilm approach these kinds of topics and fan demands?
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting because I think the response to fans from I really feel like, and this will probably get me some hate letters, but I feel like Kathleen Kennedy actually wants to make stuff that the fans want to see, right? And the people who, and I will be very careful not to cross the line, but the people who say that, you know, Disney has an agenda and all that political stuff, Kathleen Kennedy makes movies that make money. She's not going to go down that road. So where I'm going with this is I feel like Kathleen wanted to make the best Rogue One she could, the best Solo she could. And so those changes, the difference is Disney has been incredibly lax in protecting what's happening on set and behind the scenes, right? They do a decent job of holding back leaks and plot points, but they do a shit job of making sure that people have no idea what's happening in the boardroom, right? And again, so the fans, the rabid Star Wars fans, us, the people who listen to podcasts and play on Twitter all day and talk about Star Wars, we had all the ammo we needed to go in and hate Rogue One. But I guarantee you, if you ask any Star Wars fan, Rogue One in most cases is in the top. It's definitely in the top 2 of the Disney films that have come out, in 2 or 3, and it's generally in the top for the average Star Wars fan or the diehard Star Wars fan. So they created a good movie. So the difference is we liked what we got with Rogue One. And if Rogue One was a disaster, then you would have gotten much more of a vocal call for the release, the Edwards cut, I think.
Yeah. No, that's because the thing is Justice League was shite. Basically.
Yeah, it's a hard movie to watch. Yep.
Yeah. It's incredible. I got free tickets to go see it. And I took one of my friends who doesn't give a shit about superhero movies at all, but he likes to, go see films for free. And, we go out and have a drink and a meal and we go watch a film. And we sat and watched it. And the guy sat next to me.
Yep.
Pretty much at the end of every scene just went for the entire movie. Just next to me. I could just hear him all the way through. It's like, just like, right. When is this going to end? And it was incredible. Like I've never seen a movie so the tonal thing just clashing and just like, how can we force this how can we make a Snyder movie that appeals to like Marvel fans? Basically.
Correct. That's exactly what they were doing. Yep. At that
and just trying to punch the square peg in the round hole and just like, so I still sometimes will sit there and I'll think about scenes from that film and just be like, how did that get signed off on? Right. How did that line of dialogue get through? And I guess it is kind of like going back to what you were saying before, like studio meddling of like, that very short-sighted idea of okay, well, what's working over there? Let's do that.
Right.
With what we have, with our tools, can we do that? And
I think you could argue that's probably why Solo went through what it did, was because I think Disney for a few moments said, we want a Lego movie type Star Wars. We've been saying that we're going to take these anthology films and we're going to make different types of movies. And Rogue One is definitely a war film, and it's really really well done. And I think as they started to see Solo go wherever it was going, they said, this is going a little too far. So let's be careful not to fall for the trap of saying, let's make a Star Wars movie that fits whatever the latest, sort of trending type of movie is. Whereas, and I think DC should have just committed to that gritty, dark world. I mean, I don't love that for my superheroes, but I loved it in The Dark Knight. I thought that was fantastic. Yeah. Not just one of my favorite superhero movies, but one of my favorite movies ever. It's just a very good movie. And then they looked over, and it was Pepsi versus Coke in a way, in that they said, well, what's working over at Marvel? Let's try that. And it especially doesn't work if it's like if when you see those really excellent and what I find to be really funny, like trailer edits, like there's a trailer edit of The Shining shot or put together as a comedy.
That's very good.
It's hilarious. It doesn't work. You couldn't pull, but what if you took the rest of The Shining and then you tried to actually make it into a comedy?
Yeah, actually do it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's what I found so interesting about what you were saying is something popped into my head. It's like, well, it's almost as a reaction to what people didn't like about the Snyderverse, in a sense. Like Pete, you just said that it's not, dark and gritty. It's not necessarily what you want from your superhero films.
Right.
And I seem to remember, and look, people in the chat room, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I seem to remember when Batman versus Superman came out, there was a big kickback from, I guess, what you would call the traditional comic book hero fans.
Right.
This isn't that's not the or even Man of Steel. That's not the Superman that I know. Batman versus Superman, that's not my Batman.
Right.
And so there was this kind of groundswell number one of DC universe people that didn't like where that direction was headed. But the studio had signed on with Snyder, and Snyder had his vision. It was going this direction. And then when he was out, the studio, it seems, reacted to fan backlash and said, oh, we've got to course correct this thing.
Yeah.
And did it once. And now they're doing it again.
Yeah.
Like it was what it at least looks like. It's like, oh, well, now the people have said that they want it back the way it was. So let's just give them what they want.
Right.
That slippery slope is hugely, hugely dangerous, I think, for the craft of filmmaking and I guess security for filmmakers in a sense. It's like it makes them seem disposable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and so it's interesting too, and it's hard to connect it directly, but we've seen it now twice because Sonic, I know that's a really weird place to go with this.
No.
That's what I was in my notes for this. So
Good. Because in this case, the fans like got it even before it hit the theaters. And let's face it, that thing was creepy as hell. But and from what I also understand, I could be wrong with this, and this might be just having read incorrectly, there wasn't as much Jim Carrey in the original sort of put together movie. And look, I'll admit it. I went to go see the Sonic movie because my son bought into all the commercials, and I was like, all right, I'll spend the money on it. And I really enjoyed it. It was really good. But that's, not really good. Let me rephrase that. It wasn't Oscar. It wasn't my favorite movie of the year. That said, they did respond to the fan reaction, and I didn't like that either. I felt like that was dangerous, and I don't know what the impact that would have been on the movie if it was the creepy looking Sonic versus the more video game looking Sonic. But once it was funny. I had done an interview with Ken Knapsack like the week that the change happened, and he and I talked about just this sort of thing is you have you have this situation where, and I think you were alluding to it before, Matt, in that now that this has happened, what's it going to do for that section of fans that feels like now they have a say? Which, by the way, you shouldn't have a say. And it's we live in a world now, a social media world, and there was a comedian, and I can't think of his name now. It's going to kill me. He passed away. He was a funny guy, and he was on a local radio show here in New York City, and he said, the problem with Twitter is it makes people forget that we're celebrities and they can't just talk to us whenever they want to. But this is the world we're in now, right? Like, if I'm loud enough, so I don't know if you. This is my little claim to fame was when the Trevorrow script was going on. Trevorrow script. I don't know how to say it. The Trevorrow script was going on, which the other script was allegedly going around. I just, for shits and giggles, I wrote a treatment of what I would have done with The Rise of Skywalker, just because I don't know why. I was bored one afternoon, and I put it out there, and Trevorrow wrote #release the Trevorrow cut after he read it, which was that was hilarious. But the funny thing is, there's no way he should have ever seen anything I did, right?
No,
because
exactly, yeah.
I'm just this little guy living in New Jersey, but now, like, fans have this expectation. If I yell loud enough, HBO Max is going to put on the movie that I demanded, and it's a win for me. So where else can I get the win? And if it's, if the DC universe is now content, we know damn well that pieces of the Star Wars universe are going to start shouting and expect to see a different cut of The Rise of Skywalker or a different cut of The Last Jedi or whatever.
Well, we're already seeing that. There's a lot of, like, because we've posted about this video and stuff like that. And I have had a few comments about, like, release the JJ cut of Rise of Skywalker. And people saying, like, I don't think there is a JJ cut. I think he just he's talked about there being more scenes and less scenes. But JJ is powerful enough in Hollywood to not have a movie get taken away from him. He's not some independent director that, like Colin Trevorrow, who they've, like, given this big thing to, or Lord and Miller. Like, Kathleen Kennedy and JJ she wouldn't be able to fire him. Like, I think he's too ingrained in the system. Going back to your Sonic thing, after that all came out and they started changing it and they pushed the movie back and all that, I did see, like, Ashley Lynch on Twitter. She was posting a lot about news stories about the animation team doing unpaid hours and the crunch time and basically just getting, like, worked to the bone. Mm-hmm. And it was very interesting to see all the replies to that were very unsympathetic and basically just like, oh, well, who needs pay when you're making art, and the movie will be payment and stuff like that.
Fuck off.
And the thing that was annoying me, I was like, it's Sonic the Bastard Hedgehog. It's not, it's not like they're going to do something, because that was the thing. I don't even actually know the numbers on Sonic the Hedgehog, but I was like, this movie is 100% going to just disappear down the toilet. It's not going to be like this brand new, amazing thing. And the only chance, well, I mean, it could definitely win an Oscar this year because it's one of the 5 movies that have been released this year. So
it made it. Woo! Yeah,
that's it. It should just be Best Picture by the fact that it got out. But yeah, no, it's fascinating. And the thing is that, like I say at the start, like that thing of, like, if you give a mouse a cookie, it's going to want a glass of milk. It's like there's not a sense of we've won. Brilliant, let's celebrate our triumph. There's always going to be that sense of, like, well, I also didn't like this and I also didn't like that, sort of entitlement, that propriety. When you see Matt made a good point before about Superman, there's a lot of, like, hashtag not my Superman, hashtag not my Luke Skywalker, hashtag not my Doctor Who. It's like, no, it was never yours.
Right And I think that's kind of the difference here, I think. And that was the issue with Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, when people did say not my Luke Skywalker. And you're 100% correct. It's not, it was the choice of the filmmaker to take that character and go there. You may not have liked that. And the difference here, I think, with the Snyder cut is his vision was one thing and then it got shifted gears. And so I've I don't know how you handle it. And I do professional communications for the day job, and I don't know how you release that news that the Snyder cut is coming out without, in a way, to not empower one group and beat up another group, right?
Yeah.
And I think the big difference here, though, too, is I don't know a lot of people that loved Justice League the way it came out. It was like, oh, I'm going to lose my favorite movie of all time. But you're right. It's an interesting challenge because and I think that's the most important thing to remember with any genre. And I think we saw it a lot in the sequels for Star Wars. And these characters grow in your mind, especially something like Superman, who's been around for nearly 100 years now. And that character to my dad is a very different character than he is to me, than he is to my son. And with the same sort of thread, but it's an interpretation. And I would argue that Christopher Nolan's Batman wasn't necessarily the Batman that I grew up with, but I loved what he did with it. So have at it. And it was a fantastic way to portray that. I grew up with the Michael Keaton Batman, which was, for better or worse, so that's a great, that's my impression of him, kind of cartoony. So I can see where we would want to see the Snyder cut. I think it's a curiosity, but it's not a victory. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think it's a creative win, but it's not a victory for the fans. And or rather, it shouldn't be looked at that way.
Yeah. The thing that I think kind of even muddies this further is, I think if you take one extra little step back and look at possible motivations for it, I mean, it's transparently there to get people on HBO Max.
Without a doubt. Yep.
Without a doubt. I mean,
spiritual victory. It's like,
there is commercial interest in this.
Yeah.
Like, first and foremost. Absolutely first and foremost. And then there is the creative side of things, which makes me feel so tired, because like it for better or worse, at least the DC universe felt different to me. Mm-hmm. It didn't feel like it was just trying, as Sean said, to just shoehorn in the MCU.
Right.
Like they didn't go down the route of making you necessarily care about every character first and have intro stories and then build it to a climax point. They started with the big bang and then were working their way backwards from there. And it's like, cool, maybe that doesn't work, but they were trying something different. It felt different.
Right.
So it feels like a win, don't you think? Like creatively, it feels like a win for, at least for Snyder. He's getting to finish what he started.
Well, and I think there's two pieces to what you just said that are really important. One is the DC universe, I think, and I love how this Star Wars podcast has turned DC universe. I apologize for that. It's my fault. And it's funny, I'm not even that big of a comic book guy. I'm more, but it's an interesting concept, right? I mean, there's so much around it. But I think the thing to me about that is the DC universe has an opportunity right now. And if I was in charge, if they called me and I'm sitting here by my phone, they haven't called yet, but I'm waiting. If they called me on it, I would say just follow that kind of comic book idea, and that you can make whatever story you want within these characters. It can be kind of goofy, or because the Joker is DC Universe, but there's no way that connects to anything else that we've seen so far. And it was an interesting interpretation of the character. You could have this new Justice League movie, this new old Justice League movie, as an interpretation of what Justice League is. And now the Wonder Woman movie and they don't have to live together. I think that's the other difference, though, to the Star Wars universe, to try to pull it back to that, is that Star Wars is its own universe. It's got its rules, it's got its characters, it's got its expectations. And I think that's where I go on record as saying I really enjoyed The Last Jedi. It's not my favorite Star Wars movie, but I enjoyed the movie. The further away I get from Rise of Skywalker, the more questions and issues I take with it. I don't dislike it, but it's not my favorite Star Wars movie. But the choices that were made in all 11 films that have been in the theaters are purely Star Wars. Whereas you could argue that Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Justice League, and Joker, they're all characters from the same universe, but in completely different places.
Which is, like you say, very comic. I am a big comic book guy, and what's interesting now is you can pick up, say, whoever's like Captain America, Hulk, and Thor, say, like three at random, and rather than and those stories all take place in the same universe, and they intersect and they cross and all that. But Captain America's currently telling a story about how you can't trust your government, and it's all about, it's like a big manhunt thing. Hulk is pure horror, like he's gone to hell, he keeps coming back to life. It's a real Jekyll and Hyde thing. And Thor's telling some big galactic thing where he's out in space fighting gods, and the whole thing just works together. Whereas and that's cool. Like, that's how comic books work. You have these three things, and occasionally they all come together and they tell one story, but they don't feel like, because sometimes the MCU feels like they're all of the same genre, say, you know, like they sort of mix, they mix a bit too easily. Whereas DC was doing quite an interesting thing of like, oh no, we're going to get these different filmmakers in and make these very different films. And whether you like that or don't like that, that's just part of living, isn't it? You know.
Well, and it's interesting because I think that's one of the lessons that Star Wars learned, Lucasfilm and Disney learned, and made the decision not to go that way. Because again, I would love to. I'm not going to start a hashtag release the Lord and Miller cut, but I would like to see, as a student of film, as somebody who cares about the way stories are told, I'd like to see what wasn't working and why, and not look at it and say it was better or worse, but recognize that, you know, again, Joker was such a interesting movie. Like, my two favorite DC movies are the two darkest movies. I love Dark Knight and I love Joker because they were interesting character studies, right? And they were very psychological and but that was really cool. I would not want to watch a Thor movie like that because the MCU, I can't see them going that way now, right? The MCU has created that tone and taste. The same thing with Star Wars. There's that similar tone and taste, and there's comedy in Star Wars, and there's a little bit of light touch of romance, but there's action and adventure, and there's a feel to it that you can't go too far off of at this point, I don't think.
Well, there's an interesting experiment. If you ever get like a bunch of time, watch all of the Bond films. Like, I had to do it. I did it the other year. I was watching and reviewing all the Bond films as a thing for a website I used to write for. And what was fascinating was they start off very, very strong, and then you can see they start to get a little bit weird. But you can also see them chasing trends. So like, if you look at Moonraker. Live and Let Die comes out.
Moonraker,
like the blaxploitation thing. Moonraker's Star Wars, and then also even like Spectre, they saw cinematic universes, interconnectivity. That's what people like with the MCU. So they make this film that's like, oh no, there was a big bad guy at the top all the time, and and that's an interesting thing that you see, because Star Wars obviously has been going since the 70s and has never really done that. You never feel as though they're trying to like ape something that already exists. They take influences. You can see a lot of like Mad Max Fury Road, for example, in Last Jedi and in Rise of Skywalker. And obviously all the swashbuckling and Dune and Flash Gordon and all that. But they're never sort of like chasing a zeitgeisty moment, which I think goes back to what you were saying about Lord and Miller. Maybe it was a case of, while that was going on, Kathleen Kennedy was like, no, this is going to age like milk.
Right. It's too Lord and Miller now.
Yeah, it's too now. Like, so we're going the wrong way. So we'll go for something a little bit more classic that will age better. Like I always say, like that Solo movie, I really like it. And if that movie had come out in 1988, it would have been the biggest movie of the year. Right. Because it's it's very timeless almost in terms of like where it is.
Yep. Well, and it's interesting because Star Wars does tend to address the politics of the time, right? Without going into it, but they do it in a way that it's a repeatable story, right? Because you know, if you look at the prequels, I mean, it's a beware of your government kind of story, and that will last, unfortunately, forever.
Politics are timeless in that sense. Like, there's always going to be examples of shit that we should have learned from.
Right.
It's like, we're doing this again.
Right. Instead of history books, we should all just watch Star Wars movies and James Bond, and we'll understand what's next. Oh, the guy's he's not going to leave office, and he's going to start an army. I get it. Okay, got it. All right.
Yeah. I've seen this. I know this guy. I know this guy.
But I think that's 100% it is, because I and maybe that's why why I like Joker and why I like Dark Knight is because they are sort of timeless in a way. I mean, you watch, my Batman, the Michael Keaton Batman, and it couldn't be more 80s, that movie, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's fun. It's a time capsule, but it's not going to last forever. Whereas I think some of those other types of stories do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. There's the solo Lord Miller thing really struck me because I remember hearing about, oh yeah, they've got Lord and Miller, and I was like, oh, what did they do again? And it's like,
Right.
Oh yeah, they did it was 21 Jump Street.
Yep,
21 Jump Street,
and Lego.
Rowdy with a Chance of Meatballs.
And Lego, and I had just recently watched 21 Jump Street, and I laughed so much.
Yeah,
but I guess thinking about the thing that dates movies quite a bit, it's humor in many respects. Obviously technology, but Star Wars has always had that kind of thing going for us. Everything's a dad joke. It's dad jokes, puns, like quips and one-liners
quips,
never need to have a date stamp on it where you go, yeah, that was a joke that was really then. I remember telling jokes like that.
Yep.
That was a worry for Lord and Miller. So maybe that I question whether, like you said, Pete, whether there was a question of, actually no, Sean, you said it, that it's going to date like milk.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that was people give Kathleen Kennedy a lot of shit, but I think one of the things that she's really on top of is making sure that the movies will continue to work. And I think that's probably why she made the move she did in both the anthology films, is because I mean, they even talked about it, right? We heard them talk about it either at Celebration or wherever they were interviewed. The Lucasfilm and Disney were saying, we're going to make different types of movies with, some are going to be like a heist movie and one's going to be this. And that's a great idea, but it still has to live in that Star Wars universe, and it still has to be something you can go back to. The fact that, Phantom Menace is 21 years old this week, and you can still watch it. Right. I mean, yes, you can say some of the effects didn't age as well or whatever, but the story still works. It still works with the story that we just saw in Rise of Skywalker. It's a connected universe. If you fall too far out of that, and that's one of the things that's really, I think, important about Mandalorian, is it's wedging itself in there it's making its own mark, but it's still making the appropriate connections. There's humor in it. It's the first time we got a toilet joke in a Star Wars context, but it was funny. It worked. And so it's an interesting, it's I think what she was trying to get at. So like I said, I would love to see Krennic walking through the water in his white cape. I think, that was the scene that I would have loved to have seen, because Krennic has become one of my favorite characters. And it would be interesting to see a different ending, but I don't think we're dissatisfied with what we got.
No.
Do you think that it's more than anything, it's that we haven't been given this stuff? Like, I mean, the deleted scenes, alternate takes, all that sort of stuff, like they're notably missing.
They've kind of kept them away.
Yeah, they're under lock and key. And I mean, would that satisfy people enough just to be able, like with The Last Jedi, to be able to say, oh, look, there's this entire like fish nun scene and the male fish nuns, like all these things that they gladly just said, yeah, here you go.
I think, Sean, were you going to say something? I don't want to interrupt you.
No, please go. No.
I think it's because I think the Star Wars management, Lucasfilm and Disney, have become very intelligent about making sure they control what gets out there, because the fact, so there's this sort of fan conspiracy theory that the Trevorrow script was leaked by Trevorrow because he was pissed off that he didn't get what he wanted, right? Because I don't think there's any way Disney would allow that out there. I think the reason we haven't gotten Rise of Skywalker additional or deleted scenes is because they know that will fuel that vocal minority of fans to say, look, see, if we got the baby head in the water, it would have been a much better movie, right? Which I hope people know what I'm talking about when I say baby head in the water, because otherwise that is a dark film. But so I think they're very guarded of that. I think we will get the Edwards shot scenes in time.
Yeah.
And it will be with a story that says exactly what we were just talking about. Look, the movie itself, we looked at it. We were going to have the Citadel and the database be in two different places, but the movie was going to run 3 hours, and it felt like it was dragging, so we didn't do it. And that's fine. That's a good story, and I would buy that. I think we're ready now to see those sort of scenes and see some of the alternate takes. But I think Disney is kind of on top of, these are fans that they're gonna rip us apart if we share this stuff, and they're going to say, see, we told you. If Kylo said this instead of that, different movie. And I think they're very mindful of the sensitivity of the fan base right now.
Too fresh, basically.
It's
too soon.
like 30 years before we got deleted scenes from the original trilogy, wasn't it? Like, I remember them coming out.
Well, and I think if Disney does nothing else well, which is not true, they do a lot really well. But one of the things I think that was very interesting, and I don't think it gets enough conversation, is in the first couple of years that they owned Lucasfilm and Star Wars, there was zero mention of the prequels ever. And I think one of the reasons for that was because it was still a fresh burn for people who still hadn't gotten to it, right? And haven't gotten to that comfort level. I walked out. I was at the premiere in New York City of Phantom Menace and walked out and was like, I don't think I like that movie. And now I like it a lot, and I love the prequels. Whereas a couple years ago, I don't think I could have said that. But now that the whole universe is there, and there's been the time difference. So I think Disney recognized that, and I think they're very smart about recognizing where are the fans right now. If I give you a scene nobody disliked the Force Awakens. There were potential issues, right? But everybody said it was a retread. That was the biggest concern. And honestly, if that's their biggest problem with the movie, that's great. So they gave us the deleted and alternate scenes. We saw Kylo and the Falcon. We saw the snowspeeder or whatever it was, but we were okay with that at this point. I think you can live with the fish nuns and be okay with that. But I think if there's a scene of Kylo spending more time on Mustafar that they're setting on right now, I think that'll lead to some pain that we're not ready for yet.
I think they have to be very careful as well with, and this might get me hate letters, with releasing like more Kylo Ren or Ben Solo footage, angering that particular element of the crowd who didn't like his story arc at all. And you don't want to get, like you say, anything that gives fuel to the fire, you want to continually pull that back.
Right.
It was very clear, like you say, like when Force Awakens was being made, there was very much this sort of like quiet narrative of, we've forgotten the prequels. The prequels didn't happen. I know, like, I remember seeing an interview or reading an interview with JJ where he was talking about like the camera was panning across a desert and he was like, oh, should we put like Jar Jar's skeleton in there? Stuff like that, and it was very, and they're just completely erased from Force Awakens. And to be honest, I think during that period, I was still very anti the prequels, to be honest. I think I tried to rewatch them in the lead up and was just like, no, I hate these films. I can't do it. Right. And then it wasn't until the rewatch before Last Jedi that I was like, actually, there's some good stuff in here. And it's taken me a while to sort of appreciate them for what they are as the universe is built around it. And I watched Clone Wars and I read more of the extra materials and stuff like that. But Disney were very smart to say, no, the average fan is still feeling burnt from 10 years previous when we released these movies that people didn't like. And then now it's sort of like, no, now you can go book wild. People are really into these films. Prequel memes has sort of like reinvigorated the genre. So yeah, brilliant. Well,
I actually think they went so far, and I've said this before, I think they went so far as to plant it. The first line of The Force Awakens is, this will begin to set things right.
Yes.
And I think that to me was sort of confirmation that, all right, we're going to stay away from that for now. But you know what? The fan in that 5-year period between that movie and today, or 6 years or 5, whatever it is, the prequel fans, the prequel kids are now, I see it when I do when I do my show and I do interviews with, there's people who the prequels are their movies. So, and and they've aged, and the full, now that we have the full story with Clone Wars and Rebels and everything, it all fits together nicely. So
yeah, I agree. That's great.
Yeah. With our last few minutes, I thought I'd throw the question to the people in the live chat. So let us know what you would think about an Edwards cut, if you want one or not. Also, even just extend that to deleted scenes, just more information. Do you want it there just so that you can make your own fan edits? Leave us some comments, and anything that it makes us laugh, we might read out in the last few minutes.
I'd love a documentary. I'd love just like, or I think that you need to release the Cassian TV show.
Yes.
And then have Gareth Edwards direct one episode of that just to show that there's no bad blood. And then a Rogue One documentary that just clears the whole thing. Because you don't want to get into like a have you seen I can't think of the movie, the Island of Dr. Moreau, the making of movie of that, where that all just falls apart. And that's very much Richard Spencer, who was the director who got fired, his sort of like fuck you to the studio, like this is my side of the story, which we don't want that.
Exactly.
So it'd be interesting to have Edwards come in and say, this is what we were doing, these are some of the scenes we did, this is the thing, but the pacing got a bit weird. Tony Gilroy came in and he helped out, and I worked with him, and so on and so on. But let's see what happens with Cassian first. I think that's going to be the key. I would love to see Gareth's take on that, and make sure he's involved, and I think he will be. And I think that's something that that Kathleen Kennedy does a really good job of, is make sure that it's no coincidence that you saw photos of George Lucas on the set of The Mandalorian. They're not stupid.
Right. So.
Yeah. Ron Howard's come out and said like he did a screening of Solo for Lord and Miller, and they really enjoyed it. And there's little pieces where you're just like, I think for us we assume that everyone's at each other's throats, but chances are it's just like maybe it's water under the bridge.
Just business.
It's just business. It simply
these people are professionals. Like,
they got their payout. They went in Spider-Verse.
And it's all contracts and paperwork at the end of the day. It's just, like I always think of it in the same way that I do, like, the Apple and Samsung lawsuits. Like they're in court with each other, but they're buying, like, Apple's buying NAND flash memory from Samsung at the same time, because it's like, that's this. No, that's this problem, but there's this one here, and it's just completely separate in their minds. They're bros. We apply a lot to it as just regular folk, I think.
100%. Yep.
Sean, your point about, actually both of your points about documentary series and things like that. It's one thing that I'm really enjoying about The Mandalorian, like the Disney Gallery special. It's being able to actually say, cool, so the content exists now, like, let's just have a completely separate show that is all about the content. Like, I love that. I think that is fantastic. And we never got that really with Rogue One, did we? Like, I mean, we have a very good behind the scenes documentary on both The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. Rogue One got nothing. Really?
Zero.
No, I actually just bought the Blu-ray of Rogue One this week, and I knew there wasn't going to be much, but I was like, it is very much sort of like little mini character intros and shit like that. But not much. Like Solo gets like round tables and all that. Like, but it's a shame, because I think Rogue One is probably the most interesting and different Star Wars of all the Star Wars movies. Like, it's one that very much sits by itself in terms of like, that was the first Star Wars that came out with just all new stuff. Like, it was all, none of the main characters were main characters who we knew before. The villain was new and all that. And it was very much like, this is a real roll of the dice to see if they can make Star Wars that isn't Jedi related. And for me, it was a success. It's a shame, really, the whole Solo thing played out, because I'd love to be continuing to get movies like that. But we'll see. I mean, Mandalorian obviously has shown that they can do it in TV, so maybe that's where the movement is,
and do it with a lower budget as well.
Yes.
I mean, we were talking about this before the stream, just like the way that the volume changes everything. Like, I mean, the implication of being able to drop the budget down. Like last night, I was watching it with Lisa, my partner, and I turned to her and I said, could you imagine if someone making Game of Thrones was told that this is what The Mandalorian's going to look like, and we're going to do it on this less budget than what you're spending per episode,
Right.
Yeah.
And it's going to look better. It's going to look better than what you're doing. They would have gone bullshit.
Yeah.
They were dropping like $2 million an episode, weren't they, towards the end of Game of Thrones? Like ignoring like salaries and stuff like that.
Yeah. It was a
and
lot
it's
of
incredible.
money.
It's a lot of money. And I don't think like Mandalorian doesn't have any big stars who are going to be sucking in that kind of salary yet. And it seems like it's a lot of practical effects, which aren't that expensive to do. And then, the volume, just like brilliant. They'll just keep making the show forever.
Yep.
Yeah. But hopefully other Star Wars stories. Hopefully we start getting more things like Rogue One and like Solo. Even if it does go straight to streaming, you know, there it is. There's the business reason for keeping people on a streaming platform. It's like you'll spend $10 a month, but you're not going to go and buy a DVD every month or whatever it may be.
Right.
I did think that's how we were going to get Solo too. Like that was going to be part of like the Disney Plus like announcement, which is obviously exactly what HBO Max did. This Snyder thing. They're not stupid. They're like, okay, we've got a built-in audience here. 20 minutes, throw in Snyder 20 to 30 million to do it is peanuts, considering how quickly they're going to recoup that.
Exactly. And it's all going to be done, and it's all doable right now because it's all just editing and effects and finishing stuff versus, you know, going out and shooting anything. So it puts them in a great spot.
Yep.
Well, guys, we've hit basically the hour, and Pete, I know you've got to go and get onto your own live stream that starts in 30 minutes?
Yeah. You know, this is really testing the limits of people's patience with me tonight. So we'll see how it goes.
We do that all the time. 5 minutes in, you just see people just like leaving the chat like
mainly me. Like I didn't mainly me. I didn't make any really crass jokes this time. It might be like Pete's professionalism really just kept me on track. Otherwise, I'm just there like,
wow, nobody's ever said that before. That's crazy.
Oh God! So Pete,
this was a blast.
Yeah, thanks for coming, man.
We'll have you on
thanks
again.
for doing that on short notice and whatnot. This was really fun. And look, you're streaming in half an hour. So why don't you tell everyone how people can actually find you away from us? Because, you know, we do like to control things like bearded puppet masters, but you know, we can't control everything.
Can't control everything. Well, you can find me on my website, which is ATGcast, and you can find we just started this Beyond the Blast Doors thing where couple different podcast friends of ours, we are now doing also video versions of every single podcast we do, and we're just putting them up on this one YouTube channel, which is great. And I wish I had it when I had some of the guests that I've had over the last year, but it's good. I have some really fun guests coming up on Around the Galaxy over the next couple weeks. I tend to not drop names until I have them in the can, but there's going to be some cool, fun people. I got a musician coming up kind of out of nowhere, which is kind of cool. I got an author coming up. So just some fun stuff. And you can find everything I do, my Phantom Menace fan fiction novelization and all that stuff at atgcast.com, or follow me on Twitter at atgcast, and you'll see me say things like releasing the Snyder Cut is a bad idea.
Oh man, well thank you, and thanks to everyone in the live stream. Sean, do you want to take us out?
Yes, so find us on Facebook, find us on YouTube, like us, follow us, subscribe, hit the little bell, do all those kind of things. Do comments. We love comments. I've had some really good comments this week, like really positive ones, which is
I know.
Nice.
It's fucking weird.
Like positive to the point where I'm like suspiciously reading them like 3 times, then sending them to Matt and saying, "Is this positive?
Are they taking the piss? Is this a coded message? I'm looking for like capital letters. It's like F U. Sean.
What are they really trying to say?
But that's been really fun. You can tweet at us. Obviously, as I say every week, I am no longer on Twitter. Look how smooth and youthful I look. Each day I'm off Twitter brings a little bit of shine.
This is what Twitter does to people.
This is what Twitter does. Oh dear. And yes, get on Patreon and give us your money because we need it.
Art should be free. But not our art. There's nothing artistic about what we're doing.
Art should be free. That's why we're not making art. And yes, check out our merch. You can get, I know I've seen a lot of people in the chat say Iron Off Matt's shirt, the Mon Mothma Metallica mashup. So get on TeePublic and check that out from our good friend Josh Chapman. It's a fantastic shirt, and I hate that because Josh always does that. When he does something, I'm just like, fuck, why didn't we think of that? You know,
That's a good one.
damn it. So yeah, Pete, thanks for coming on my birthday and on Empire Strikes Back's birthday, which we never really actually talked about, but whatever.
Oh yeah, Empire Strikes Back 40.
Happy birthday!
Yay.
Put on my happy birthday glasses. Happy birthday, Empire.
Yeah, there we go. We touched on it. Done.
Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, and that's it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right. Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Well, everyone, thank you very much. And yeah, we'll all speak again same time next week.
That's it. We'll be back. Can't keep us away.
Yeah.